Hi everyone, my name is Egor and I'm from Moscow. It's my first talk outside of Russia, so please forgive me my accent. Your project is like a metaphorical Death Star. You build it, you love it, you believe that it will help you to rule the world. Just like the original Death Star, it is not perfect. Unlike the original Death Star, it has more than one vulnerability. And each member of your team may become a metaphorical Luke Skywalker, shoot a rocket in a reactor, and blow it up. But this time, you and me are on the dark side, and we see our lovely project exploding. These vulnerabilities are technical debt, non-optimal work processes, internal conflicts in a team. Speed and quality of your project have a direct correlation with a number of such pain points. And the tool that helps you find and patch these vulnerabilities is code review. I managed to work in a number of highly skilled and professional developer teams for the past 6 years. This experience provided me with a set of working code review principles and practices that may be adopted by literally any team. My talk is designed as an algorithm that will help you to build a perfect code review process for your specific circumstances. There are 3 main steps in organizing code review. First, you should determine the code review goals and efficiency metrics. Second, you should organize your team and adopt some engineering practices. Third, you should make sure that your team cultivates a healthy environment for conducting code review. Let's deal with code review goals at first. I'd like to state that a set of code review goals should be different for all of you. Each project has its own business requirements and goals. Sometimes you need to be as fast as possible. Sometimes the cost of each bug is so high that you should invest a lot in detecting defects before delivery. And maybe sometimes you have a group of unexperienced junior developers and limited time to teach them. As I've already said, always consult your business requirements. For example, one of the goals is knowledge sharing in a team. Each team member has some knowledge they can share. Someone is really good at algorithms, someone knows a lot about metaprogramming, and there is also someone who is a real MVC Jedi. Having a chance to look at each other's solutions and ask questions is a great opportunity to rise the overall technical level of your team. I've looked for examples of matching this goal in some of GitHub projects. The first one is Artsy. Here, Ashfuru shares his knowledge about enums with associated values. You have to override the equality operand because it doesn't come for free. The second example is from Kickstarter application. It is also open sourced, and you should definitely look at its code base and say hello to its author, Brandon Williams, who is also here today. The discussion here is about declaring enum values order. Brandon says that it's better to use static array for it instead of relying on the declaration order. You can choose more than one goal. Here are some more examples. Shared code ownership. It's all about decreasing the buzz factor by ensuring that each component of the code has been seen and analyzed by more than one pair of eyes, and knowledge doesn't belong to a specific developer only. Code reuse. When several people who are responsible for various work tasks and possess different knowledge about the product look at each other's code, they can spot some general patterns, suggest reusing one of the pre-existing solutions, or put the current solution into a separate library. Error diagnosis. It's about detecting errors of different severity. And project consistency. Lack of it can make code reading and analysis a lot more difficult. Just keep these goals prioritized. You should always remember what's more important for your team. As I have already said, always consult your business requirements and choose the goals that will bring you maximum benefit. Every goal should be measurable and go hand in hand with collection of metrics describing its efficiency. It's important to understand if code review helps your team to perform well. One way to measure efficiency is to use the goal question metric approach. It includes 3 stages. Identify the goal you want to measure, list the questions that will help you understand the extent to which the goal has been achieved, and determine the metrics that will help you find answers to these questions. First, we identify the goal. Let's say we want to increase code use. Questions are we using shared libraries in the project? Did you put the visual styles into a separate component? Is there a lot of duplicated code? And the last thing, let's determine the metrics that will help us answering these questions. In our case, it will be the number of shared libraries, the number of hard-coded visual styles, and the level of code duplication. It is quite easy to use this framework. We check the necessary metrics before implementing the process, determine the desired outcome, and on monthly or quarterly basis, repeat all the measurements. If this can be automated, then it is even cooler. Why is this metric really good? Imagine that instead of working on suggestions on increasing code use, your team spent their time arguing about code styles, paces, steps, you know it. None of this metric would change, and you will see that there is something wrong with the process. Now, let's proceed to the second step of our guide. I will answer 3 main questions: who, when, and how. Let's start with the who. Teams can be very different. One company can have 30 people in one department working on one and the same project, while in another, one developer single-handedly supports dozens of applications. The first case, I think, is the most common one. It's a team with a few members, let's say up to 4, who all work on the same project. The best fit for this case would be a model where one needs the approval of all team members before merging the branch with the task into the master branch. Let's scale up the previous situation and imagine a large outsourcing company having several teams similar to the one described before. Each of these teams is working on their own project. The basic approach remains unchanged. Reviews are conducted for all new tasks and require the entire project team. And they also involve a team lead, who is responsible for a couple of these teams. As I said, these teams should include the team lead in the important reviews. This way, he will always know what's going on in each of his projects and could step in when his help is required. Another activity can be quite useful: periodic cross-project reviews when the developer learns about the other projects developed by his fellow teams. These reviews help everyone to be generally aware of the technologies used and about the skill sets of other project participants. Another case is a large team with all the members working on one large-scale project. It is reasonable to set a certain limit to the number of reviewers approving a branch to be merged. This number can depend on the size of the team, but 2 or 4 people are usually enough. And the last case is also the bitterest one. The developer is working alone in the team. First of all, the goal of collective ownership becomes quite useless. No collective, no ownership. The rest of the goals also become rather senseless. However, an external look at the code base can help spot some errors and increase the technical level in general. In this case, the developer needs to turn to the open community. I can recommend you 3 different channels. First of all, various chats and communities of developers. For example, the famous big Slack community. The second channel is meetups of developers. For example, Peer Lab, that is held all over the world weekly. And joint work with a colleague from another function, Android, web, or backend. The second question is when to do code review. The main issue here is flow state. Pulling a programmer out of the flow state can be quite destructive. Just imagine, you're neck deep into the development of a next feature, building castles of abstractions in your mind, when suddenly you feel a shy tap on the shoulder and your colleague, hey man, can you please do a brief code review? Of course, nothing good can come out of a situation like this. The developer can no longer work normally and is too biased and annoyed to review the work of others. A good solution here is a schedule. Each developer in the team decides the time of the day when they are able to review. The schedule of the whole team is kept in one table so that one could use it as a guidance when choosing the appropriate time for making pull request. Of course, some reviews really need to be done as quickly as possible. the most important thing is not to make a habit out of situations like this, but to stick to the routine order. And the last question is all about different best practices that helps your reviews stay effective. Let's get through them one by one. I'm sure you came across some situations like this. After the task has been implemented, it turns out that it had to be done in an absolutely different way. Code review is not the best place to argue about the global architecture decisions. The code is already finished, the task is almost done, and decoding it from zero will be too costly. Such things cannot be postponed. They should be addressed beforehand. A good option is to conduct an architecture review and defend the component before your team in words or using a diagram. Of course, there are cases when a brilliant idea comes to someone else as late as at the point of review, and these ideas should just be documented in the issue tracker, and after it, you never return to them because the perfect is the enemy of the good. There is an interesting paradox. The less code is provided for review, the more comments the reviewers leave. This rule remains true for virtually any team. Just a couple of lines of code can provoke broad discussions and heated debates. But as soon as you increase the scope of changes up to several thousands of lines, the number of comments drops to 1 or 2 and remains unchanged. This practice is very simple. Don't submit too many changes at once. This requirement correlates with the standard rule of breakdown of tasks. Each task should take no longer than 1 workday to complete. If too much code is submitted at once, the reviewers will lose focus quite easily, and many issues will simply be overlooked. The authors can spot the majority of code errors themselves. That's why the developer should look through the code himself once or twice before asking colleagues to review his work. This simple procedure will save you a lot of time and nerves and improve your relationship with colleagues. When you conduct code review on a permanent basis, it becomes difficult to focus on the actual meaning of changes. One way to help reviewers maintain their focus is to provide a detailed description of each code review. I usually use the following template: review title, review description, linked issues from your issue tracker, and some hotspots to pay additional attention. Checklists are cool. Use them for code review as well. Here are some examples of questions from such a checklist. Is there a code that has been commented out? Was the business logic covered by any tests? Were all the errors processed? Are all constants in one place? And like it. Try to memorize the questions that your team asks most often during the review and put them in this checklist. But do not let this list grow too long. Think about the ways to automate each checkpoint on your list. Given enough efforts, you are most likely to cover the majority of the needs. There is a great number of tools that helps you automate this process: lean tests, static analysis tools, and duplicated code detection tools. One of these tools is Danger CI. It can be described as a single aggregator of all possible pull request checks. As its maintainer AutoTherox says, Danger provides the glue to let you build out all the rules specific to your own team's culture. Let's expand this description a bit. Danger can help you to automate the following rules: commit messages style. For example, you can check if the commit message title includes the task identifier. Commit content conventions. You may check for the number of lines or number of files in a commit. Attaching different linters for iOS, Android, or web projects. And extracting information from build artifacts. For example, the count of unit tests, unit test coverage, Xcode warnings, and so on. All of these rules are stated in a special Danger file. You can write your own exotic rules and actions too. Here are some examples. You may collect the names of all people who took part in the pull request and send them a personal gratitude. You may verify that commit message doesn't include words from a blacklist, for example, minor fixes. And by the way, there is already a plugin that helps you find the most suitable reviewers for a pull request based on the data from Git blame. In other words, Danger CI is a very powerful tool that lets you combine all of these rules in one place instead of placing them in different scripts, Git hooks, and dozens of other places. This is an example of a Denji CI message in a pull request. You're able to use Markdown syntax and publish any number of such messages. By the way, Denji works with all popular CI like Jenkins, Travis, TeamCity, and version control systems like GitLab, GitHub, and Bitbucket. There are more useful tools for conducting code review besides style checkers and linters. I'd like to talk about fully fledged systems for conducting code review. I usually suggest 3 tools: AppSource by JetBrains, Crucible by Atlassian, and GitHub by GitHub. The first 2 are standalone solutions, while for GitHub, it's more of a secondary feature. There are much more alternatives on the market, but in my subjective opinion, they either lack features or usability. I'll show you an example of working with AppSource. Other systems have similar workflows, so it should be enough. The first thing that you expect from such instrument is convenient code reading and commenting. AppSource has an integrated IDEA engine, so it has built-in code highlight support for Java, JavaScript, and Kotlin. However, Swift support is still really poor. By the way, don't be afraid, there are some phrases in Russian, but it's okay. Swift support is still poor, but you are able to open your code review in the app code. It's an IDE from JetBrains, and you can do code review right from your IDE. It's really great. You can browse through open reviews in the AppSource. You can tag commands, see the comment history, set up flexible notification system, and see the detailed statistic for repositories, comments, and code authors. As I've already mentioned, AppSource is a great and powerful tool. Its main advantages are an ability to open pull requests in app code, tight GitHub integration. You can mirror all the commands from the code review to the pull request from GitHub for more transparent process, powerful statistics, code ownership, and flexible notifications. The second tool is Crucible. It's pretty much like AppSource, but lacks some of its features like app code integration. However, it provides other benefit: pre-commit and snippet reviews, flexible tag system, and tight integration with other Atlassian products like Jira or Stash. And it takes time that each developer spent on the review, and it's a very interesting thing. And the last tool is GitHub. It's not a competitor for AppSource or Crucible, but it can meet your requirements for a small pet project. And my most beloved features are emoji reactions and pull request templates. As I've already said, there are more alternatives on the market. For example, Gerrit, Fabricator, GitLab, Bitbucket, and others. Be sure to check them out too when you will choose the tool for your own team. And finally, the last part of our guide. Let's talk about ethics side of code reviews. Avoid letting anger leak into the review, even if you feel it is justified. There is no good outcome in situations like this. It doesn't matter who broke code or who coded that silly piece of code. If there is broken code and the project had reviews, then it's the team fault, not one man. Take shared ownership of the problem, look for the solution, and for how to avoid such issues in the future. Ask questions instead of making assumptions that may sound offensive. Consider two similar comments. You don't follow the single responsibility principle. And what do you think of single responsibility principle? Can it be applied here? Of course, the second one is more tolerant. If the author agrees with your point of view, he will do the fix. If he doesn't, you will start a meaningful conversation. Questions can be offensive too. Better replace something like, why aren't you following the test coverage rules, with more neutral. I don't understand why you decided not to cover this code with tests. May you explain? Reviews carry some low energy feel by their very nature. No matter how positive you and your team are about them, you are in fact looking for places to put a finger in someone else's work. So take any chance to thank other developers and prize their solutions. Code review is not a place where long and opinionated discussions should occur. This is where comments should be kept short and to the point. If you have best practices that you think your teammates should know, there should be a special time when you can discuss these practices with them. For example, at the sprint retrospective. Remember, your colleagues doesn't criticize you. They criticize your code. Reviewers aren't worried about your personal motives. They care about the project quality, and you should share this attitude too. The feeling of pride and ownership of your work is praiseworthy, but you should be able to put yourself in place of your colleagues, consider their remarks, and admit that you are wrong. Sometimes the best decision for your problem may be proposed by someone else. Don't leave any comments unanswered. Strive to give a reviewer a concise but comprehensive answer. Be prepared to explain your technical decisions. If you agree with the remark without any further discussion, then don't hesitate to thank its author. Avoid such definitions as my code, your module, their idea. We get stronger as a team through shared code ownership and responsibility. It's one of the primary values of code review. It's not that difficult to follow all these rules. You just should have empathy for your colleagues and your collective work and stay professional. And laugh, of course. Do you remember that metaphorical Death Star from the beginning of my talk? Let's see if we were successful in fixing its vulnerabilities. First of all, we stated the concrete goals for code review and chose efficiency metrics. From now on, our Death Star won't fly pointlessly in space. We organize code review in a way that's most suitable for our team. Now pull requests always have reviewers, and don't stay open for too long. So every stormtrooper in our crew knows his duty, and no rebels would be able to sneak on board. We chose a number of engineering practices for more effective code reviews. They help to keep the emergency tunnels to the reactor securely sealed. And in the last, we discussed how to keep a healthy climate in a team, develop empathy, and stay happy. The Death Star crew is highly motivated and is focused on its general task, to conquer the galaxy. You and your team need code review. And if you still doubt, you can write the question in Twitter, and I will answer it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Egor. I really like the empathy part, because in my experience, when I'm doing code review, obviously, most of the time you are actually giving comments about things that are not well written, and it gives the impression that everything is negative. So it's kind of like a bummer. Maybe have you tried putting some jokes, or I even tried sometimes to put smileys and things like that, and maybe that can help also.
Yeah, it's true. It can help, but it's important not to post too much memes, you know.
Yeah. You need to keep it to the point, but sometimes it's hard. Like what you were saying is really interesting. Is to be sure that your colleague will not be mad, then try yourself being kind, but also to accept the criticism. And that's kind of hard to do, but that's a good thing to keep in mind, I guess.
It's really important.
Yeah.
I guess we should try posting comments with emojis.
Like the poo one. Can start some flame wars.
Good point.
What about the tools? You were referring to some kind of generic tool for this task, but do you know some tools that could help us in more specific to iOS development or macOS development?
I can suggest you try using OCLint if you still didn't. It's a static, it's a linter for Objective-C and C++ projects, or SwiftLint. It's a linter for Swift projects, and one of its authors, JP Simmons, is also here today.
Yeah,
I like to say it.
I was asking about that because sometimes when you do code reviews, there are some stuff that are hard to read. Obviously, when you don't have your ID, that's why having app code is nice for that. But we don't want all to switch to app code for some reason. But looking at some code inside your browser, like for example, when you're using GitHub, it's kind of hard to follow what's inside the code.
As for me, I use app code only for code reviews. So I do all the work in Xcode and see my reviews in app code. It's really convenient.
Oh, that's smart. I didn't get that you could do that actually. Yeah, because let's say you have a xib or a storyboard, then it's really hard to. I mean, you cannot even review that on the code review system.
Yeah. So you were speaking about doing small reviews, because of course when you have a large number of lines, nobody reviews what you're doing. That happens all the time. So what's your approach in when having a big feature and wanted to do like a review? You split by sub stories, or you have other processes?
Yes, the best way I think is splitting this task in smaller tasks, in sub-stories. Yeah, and another way is to do code review before the task is fully implemented. So maybe once in 2 days you post a review with a not completed feature, and your teammates look at it, post their comments.
Yeah, and you just specify that it's work in progress. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's a bit the same problem. Is at which point do you stop using the tool? And there are some code reviews that are really ping pong match, and like you're exchanging, and it's sometimes not the best way to the best channel to exchange about that. Would you recommend to maybe pick up the phone or go to your colleague and start chatting about that? Can that help, you think?
Yes, I don't think that it's good to have very long discussions in comments in the code review. So if you have a question, if you want to discuss something, it's really easy to call someone or to come to him and.
Yeah.
You have a question from the audience, which is a really nice one. So let's assume you are in a team and you are like the most experienced developer of a team, and you tend to have all the reviews to do for everybody, for all the features, and they always are attributed to you. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of time management. So a developer should know how much time he is able and he wants to put in code reviews, because
that's a good point. Like, how do you? I mean, what's the rule of thumb? Like, do you spend a lot of time? I was asking to some colleagues, like, how much time do you spend refactoring your code? And most of them said a lot of time, like maybe more than a third of the time. And what about code review? Like, it seems it's a very important task.
As for me, I usually spend about an hour a day in the morning for code reviews. Yeah, I come to work, make my coffee, open app source, and for an hour I do code review.
Yeah, right after Facebook, right? And to come back on these situations where you kind of disagree on some points, at the end, who's going to decide? Like, how do you? I mean, is it a good thing to refer to, I don't know, some hierarchical guy that will actually take the final decision? Sometimes that will lead to a lot of painful discussions and bringing some bad mood to the team. Like, that's pretty some scary.
I think that the team, that great team, should be able to make technical decisions itself, and they should refer to the team lead only when they have a really serious problem, when they really can decide it together. But for developing shared code ownership, they should feel this ownership. They should know that it's their technical decision, not some guy from above.
And just one point about like what's in your experience, what is the best benefit of reviewing the code? Is it more like, I don't know, spotting bugs before they occur, or making sure that the code remains maintainable, or things like that? What would be the best benefit that would give the envy to go that path?
As for me, the most important benefit is shared code ownership, as I've already said. Yeah, because team who has this shared ownership, they perform really well.
Yeah, it's a matter of really understanding, sharing the knowledge, and that's the...
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
That was I guess the first international conference of Egor, and I guess he made one of the best slides deck I've ever seen in a conference. And there is
Star Wars and 8-bit.
So make him a great applause. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Egor.